Wetpixel Live. My name is Adam Hanlon. I'm the editor of Wetpixel, and we'd like to thank Icolite for sponsoring this episode. Icolite do a huge range of housing, strobes, ports, and equipment for almost every brand and model of camera. So please head on over to icolite.com to check out what they do. I'm thrilled to be joined today by Phil Medcalf. Hi, Phil.
Hi, Adam.
Phil is one half of a company called Alphamarine Photography, who offer housings and other photography products, and also do some training with some very successful training programs catering specifically for compact camera users here in the UK. So I'm going to pick Phil's brains a bit and basically start off by saying I've got one of these devices. Why do I need a compact camera? What does a compact camera do that this thing doesn't?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because compact cameras are now becoming a lot less common than we used to see them. They used to be the thing that we all used for taking photographs if we were a casual photographer on land, and they've just gone because of, hang on, these things. And for underwater photography, they have managed to sort of keep a bit of a space holding out the mobile phone, and a lot of that is because we have a lot less control of what the camera does when we're using a mobile phone. Now, people who are very into using mobile phones will be aware there are ways of getting your mobile phone camera to do more, or give you more control. We can now see it where you can use software to get your mobile phone camera to shoot RAW. You might have some control over the shutter speed. But to be honest, for underwater photography, you need quite a lot of control, especially if you want to be creative with what you're doing.
Yep.
And mobile phones kind of lack a lot of that control. It's harder to, it's less common for you to be able to do things like set the shutter speed. So that makes it a lot harder to deal with moving subjects and the movement in general. And this is one of the things you have to sort of get over to people when they're wanting to take pictures underwater.
I think the majority of them are fixed aperture, aren't they? Mobile phones?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say next. Is the other thing is that the design of these tend to be fixed aperture, so you may get filters that do the job of cutting out the light as if they're making a change to the aperture size. But generally, you're not getting the actual aperture changes, so you're not going to be able to do things like change the depth of field, which, okay, you don't get that as much with a compact camera as, say, you would get with a larger sensor interchangeable lens camera. But you still do get it, and we do teach that when we run workshops. If you're shooting with a 1-inch sensor compact camera, you can actually affect depth of field. So if you're wanting to be creative, you get more scope from using a compact camera with the sort of full manual mode that they usually have.
And the other thing, obviously, that to me is the obvious problem with it is lighting, because I mean, the vast majority of successful underwater photography involves some form of external light supply, probably a strobe. And obviously, as far as I know, there's no way of triggering a strobe off a phone. Am I right in saying that?
To my knowledge, I'm not aware of you being able to do that, because what you get as a flash on a mobile phone tends to be an LED. So you're kind of adding a more constant light. You may be able to trigger them. I'll be honest, most of my scope is in actually using compact cameras. Because the other thing is mobile phones, at least in the UK, still aren't taking a big amount of the market in underwater photography. we've sell compact camera housings. We also sell at least one, I think maybe two different phone housings.
Right.
And to be honest, I've had 2 or 3 inquiries. We've never sold one. Most people, probably the big reason why people aren't going over to them is most people keep their life in their mobile phone.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, a lot of people who aren't aware of how housings work or aren't familiar with housings who are looking for to get started in underwater photography have the impression that housings do leak, because they always see the worst case scenarios. When they ask about housings on the internet, there's always someone who says, "Oh, I had a flood."
Yeah.
So a lot of the time people are scared that they're going to get their phone flooded and that's their life.
Yeah.
To be honest, the more likely thing is, because the other thing is most phones now have some waterproofing, the most likely thing is they might lose it and the housing.
Yeah.
And I think that's what puts people off, at least in the UK.
I know I had an early iPhone housing, oh God, probably 8 years ago, something like that, and I took it to Mexico for the whale sharks. It was supplied for review, and I actually had a lot of fun with it. I have to say, for shooting ambient light. In a way, it was. I mean, I had an SLR with me, but I was actually found that the process of taking my phone underwater. I mean, I'm pretty used to putting a fairly expensive camera inside an aluminium housing, going diving with it, and I'm pretty comfortable with doing that. Putting my phone inside this housing was actually far more nerve-wracking. I think it's exactly what you say. The phones, particularly when we're traveling, do so many other functions, and they're this lifeline where we're connecting with home and everything else. And the thought of losing one it's somewhere remote, I mean, I'm sure you'd figure it out, but it is a real worry. So yeah, I find the same.
And the other thing is some of them are very expensive. When you look at a compact camera, I mean, I've got here a Canon. Terrible at holding these. A Canon G9X. You can pick one of these up at the moment new for £370. iPhones. Some of the iPhones are over £1,000. So. Okay, it does a vast amount more in organising your life, and you can take phone calls on it. But as a camera and something you're going to take in the water, it's an expensive thing compared to an actual compact camera that will give you much more scope to be creative. And the sort of other thing is the longevity of these things. Mobile phone tech is changing very rapidly, but people change their phones quite a lot. Whereas with a compact camera, you can still get fantastic pictures and be creative with cameras that have been around for 10 years. So as a sort of cost to value ratio, a compact camera probably makes a pretty sensible investment, really, if you're going to be doing underwater photography for a while.
I think a lot of people have lost sight of the fact that actually in the early days of digital, almost everything was done on compacts because the SLRs were very much in their infancy, and there was a lot more availability, both of functions and models in compact digital cameras than there was in the early days. There wasn't on SLRs, and obviously mirrorless at that point didn't really exist. So the genesis of underwater photography and digital underwater photography has been via compacts. And a lot of the things that we've figured out how to do, we figured out how to do on compacts long before they got SLRs and obviously eventually mirrorless and everything else. So the other obviously competing device, or one of the other competing devices, is GoPro action cameras. So why would, well, to my mind, maybe I should give my sort of opinion on this. I like GoPro. I think they're wonderful gadgets. but I very much think that they're video cameras. They're designed for catching video, and they do a pretty good job. The big mistake I think people make when they're shooting video with GoPros is they put it on at the beginning of the dive, switch it off at the end of the dive, and then bung the whole thing up on YouTube or whatever, Facebook or whatever, and you end up with an hour and a half of seasickness with the odd kind of few interspersed little patches of brilliance. But the problem is your audience doesn't sit down and watch the hour and a half of seasickness in order to catch it. So I think the first problem is people tend to fire and forget. They switch them on, let them go, and then don't put in the time editing them afterwards. And I think this is one of the issues with video in general. Video is great, but you've got to be prepared to put the time into edit, and it's time consuming. So to me, the GoPro, and in many ways, I think, again, going back to the analogy, you know, a lot of compact cameras are pretty competent video performers anyway. You know, something like the G9X does a really good job shooting video. So you're not really, there's no downside, I don't think, over choosing a compact camera over an action camera if for video. I don't know what your thoughts on that, Phil. I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, the classic sort of thing, and it's you know exactly what you're saying. We do a lot of talks at diving clubs, and you get people and they come up and they go, "Oh, I've got a GoPro, and I shoot video." And you sort of say, "Well, what do you do with video?" I said, "Well, they just sat on my hard drive because it's so time consuming." Actually turning the videos into a workable thing, especially if you do that thing of turn it on, get in the water and film the entire dive. It's a very time consuming process. And we always sort of say, you know, shoot very short clips if you're going to shoot video because it's much easier to organize that. But yeah, this is the thing. With compact cameras, if you look at the capability, okay, the GoPro is a video camera. The GoPro 10 is amazing for what you pay the money. You know, we're up to, I think it's 5.3K it shoots. And in theory, if you get the lighting right and the situation right, you can sample stills from your video that are going to be over 10 megapixel that are perfectly usable. The problem is with action cameras as still options is you don't have a built-in flash. You don't have the simple, easy ways to control the camera settings. You're working maybe with a couple of buttons that you have to do everything to navigate, to change the settings, whereas compact cameras tend to allow you to switch between changing aperture, ISO, and shutter speed very simply and easily, and they tend to have very good custom white balance, getting your colours right, and then they have built-in flash, so you can, you know, for close-up stuff, you can light your pictures literally using camera with the built-in flash and a housing with a diffuser on. And I always sort of try, when I'm testing a compact camera out, I'll always try and do some shooting with the built-in flash to sort of show you don't have to necessarily buy strobes. But then if you want that more control, you can trigger strobes using the built-in flash on a compact camera, which you can't do with the GoPro. So you have that stills capability.
To me, the thing about the GoPros, I mean, even the newer ones have screens on them, but the screen is actually too small for really being able to assess. I mean, my eyesight's not the best possibly, so maybe I'm a bad example of this. But the, you know, for me, I can't assess critical focus. It's too small, and I can't really assess framing. I can get framing mostly right, but it's not. And to me, you know, those are two of the features of a bigger screen. The fact that I can review images relatively easily with a compact or any other camera, I can look at what I've got and go back and reshoot it if I don't like what I've got or I've made a mistake. More commonly, you know, these are all things that really the GoPro doesn't practically doesn't allow. Yes, you can do it, but it's complicated and difficult and time consuming to do, as you say, because of the control interface is limited.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. And the other thing, when you look at compact cameras now, you're paying quite a bit more if you want the sort of higher video capability, the sort of 4K and higher frame rates. But what you can get is really quite impressive. You look at things like the Sony RX100 Mark 6 and Mark 7.
There is one.
Amazing camera for video, to the point where you see manufacturers, because they have HDMI connection, we've got manufacturers of housings making including extra bulkhead ports so you can attach a monitor to your RX100. So serious video capability from a compact camera.
And you can add things like custom wet lenses to give you fisheye effects, or possibly not so video centric, but to add additional optics to it. Yeah, I mean, it's a whole ecosystem of products that you can add to it, and those do exist as well for GoPro, but they seem somehow more limited, I think.
I think the other thing is the GoPro market for divers is often people who are much more casual about shooting video or stills, and when they look at, because there are some very good wet lens options that you can add to GoPros, but they are quite expensive. Right. There are brands that do them, but often people will look and go, well, that's the cost of the actual camera and the housing, because the GoPro Super Suit is only like about £50. They look at the accessories and go, hang on, why would I spend that much on an add-on? So
so I think we've kind of successfully talked ourselves around to the idea that we're going to stick with compact cameras for underwater anyway for the moment. I think if I may, I'm gonna call our discussion to a halt there, Phil. Just because I think we should come back and do another episode about the specific types of compact cameras that are out there, and give some people some guidance on what to look for, possibly when they're looking at buying a compact camera for use underwater. So where can people find out more about you and Alphamarine photography, Phil?
You can find us on Facebook. We have the Alphamarine Photography Limited is our Facebook page, so you can find us there, and we have a website, so alphamarinephoto.com is our website, and you'll find information about what we do in the events. You'll find our workshops and things like that.
Perfect. Well, I'll include a link in the show notes as well, so people will be able to go there to find the link to the website as well. So that's been wonderful, great discussion. Thank you, Phil.
Thanks, Adam.
We'll speak again soon, and I'd like to thank you all for watching. Please, and again, thanks to iCollect for sponsoring this episode. We really, our sponsors help us to make these episodes, so we really appreciate their support. Please feel free to add any comments about your experience with compact cameras or GoPros or iPhones or whatever it may be in the comment section, and drop us a like if you enjoyed it. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you again soon.